Winooski City Council meeting. Ask that everybody please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Deputy Mayor Brian Corrigan.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up tonight is agenda review. We have a pretty condensed agenda. I think it's all where it's supposed to be. Anybody have questions or concerns regarding the agenda? No. Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to a public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council about items that are not on tonight's agenda. So this is the free forum. We do have an agenda in the back if you've got questions about what tonight's content is. We also remind folks that we appreciate if you can please sign in the back as well so we know who attended and that we can have that record. Anything for public comment? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. We have two items on consent agenda. We'll break out the consent agenda into two votes tonight. First, we'll take up the approval of City Council minutes of January 2nd, 2018. I would entertain a motion for approval of the City Council minutes from January 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nicole, second by Brian Sweeney. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstain?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up, we have the approval of the payroll warrants from 12/17/2017 to 12/30/2017. I entertain a motion for approval of the payroll warrants as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Brian Corrigan. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda is approved as presented. City update.
Couple of quick updates this week. One, as you know, the school is doing a winter busing pilot this year, so it will start on January 16th and go through the end of March. There will be 2 stops at the O'Brien Community Center in the morning, so we are happy that they are seeking that out as an option, and hopefully students make use of it. Just a reminder that we have our Main Street Preferred Alternatives meeting on Wednesday evening. It starts at 6 with an opportunity to come in and talk with the consultants here. It's at the OCC, sorry, at the O'Brien Community Center. And then the official meeting will start at 6:30. We'll be broadcasting that over Channel 17 as well. Monday is Martin Luther King Day. Our team has done a great job again putting together some service projects, so if people are interested in recognizing Dr. Martin Luther King through service, please go to the website and sign up. And then finally, we have had a small staffing change in our administrative support services. We said goodbye to Jessica on Friday and are looking at restructuring some of those positions a little more, clarifying job descriptions and having them take on some new roles and responsibilities. So we will be coming back to you likely on the latest January 22nd with an amended budget proposal to reflect that change. And huge thanks to our staff in the front office for being willing to look at some new opportunities. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. We're up to council reports. So we started down here last time, we'll start this way this time?
Nothing to report today.
I have nothing either, thank you.
Great. Just the note that we will have the treasurer write up for next meeting, and we'll work towards that. And just a note for the public too, we don't make decisions at all in the executive session, but we will be reopening conversations around city manager contract too, coming up in the near future.
Nothing for me at this time.
Same, Public Safety Commission meeting is meeting tomorrow. So members of the public want to attend will be here tomorrow night.
Okay, with that, we will move on to our regular items. So first up, we have an appointment for the Small Business Loan Committee.
I'm gonna have Daniel Harris come right up with me.
Boy, it was, it feels like just yesterday we were approving the committee charter and you've already got,
Almost like they were waiting in the wings.
Yes, so
Just recently, on December 18th, I put forward a revised charter for the Small Business Loan Committee, which you approved. The revised charter provides an alternative structure for the committee, creating a quorum of 3 staff members to sit on the committee, while reserving 2 regular seats and 2 alternate positions for community members at large. And this is really in response to the fact that I didn't get a lot of applications for this particular committee, and we don't want to be in a position where we're not able to take applications for small business loans because we don't have enough volunteers in the community. So this allows us to continue while leaving openings available for people in the community to be part of the decision-making process. So tonight I have 2 community members that I will be bringing up for appointment, and then the staff members as well after, as 3 separate agenda items. So the first one is Daniel Harris, and I've included his application in front of you in your packets. And Daniel is happy to take any questions from you about his background or his level of interest in the Winooski Small Business Loan Committee.
Welcome.
Hello.
So first and foremost, thank you very much for offering to volunteer for this. It's always really exciting when we get somebody new coming to the table to help out with something like this, and it's always really exciting too when we see qualifications like you present too for something like this. This isn't a committee that we love diverse and inclusive opportunities for residents to serve on all kinds of different boards. But this is one that having some expertise at the table is also, we think, really going to be helpful and help it be more effective. So that's really exciting. But we kind of asked the same thing to start off with everybody. You've got a little summary here, but just for the public and council, what made you want to volunteer for this?
So I purchased a home in Winooski about 2-3 years ago, and I love this little town, and I want to help out as much as I can. And I actually was perusing the website when I saw the opening for this committee, and I was like, well, that's what I do for my day job, so I might as well help out as much as I can and get involved as much as I can handle. So here I am.
That's great. Thank you very much for your willingness to participate. It's awesome. Any other questions for Daniel? It's good your qualifications won the day, sir.
I'm happy with them.
That's great. And with that, I'll also turn to the public, see if there's any questions regarding the approval process for commissions and committees. Okay, so seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion for approval for the appointment of Dan Harris to the Small Business Loan Committee.
Second.
Motion by Nicole, second by Eric. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Most
you so
importantly,
much.
have fun.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll now move on to item B, which is potential approval for Morgan Payne to the Small Business Loan Committee.
Once again, same thing. So we do have 2 great community members who are interested in participating with our staff, which I think is really a wonderful combination to have at the table. So I would welcome you to ask any questions you have of Payne.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you too. You also bring a really cool background to this, seeing the entrepreneurial aspect go and seeing a business grow. So that's really exciting. I asked the same question. What inspired you to get involved?
Kind of the same things. I moved to Winooski over the summer. And I just find it to be such a cool place to live as a young person, and wanted to get involved, perused the website, and this came up, and it felt like a cool use of some skills I'm developing in my young career with project finance and economics, and would love to see that go to help the community. So that's what got me involved.
Outstanding.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you very, very much for your willingness to help out and to participate. That's awesome.
That's a couple of sweet finds there, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, perfect timing, really. It looks like I finagled this, but I didn't.
We believe you.
Other questions, concerns, anything for her Payne? Any questions or comments from the public in regards to the commission committee appointment process? Okay, so seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion for Payne Morgan as appointment to the Small Business Loan Committee.
So move.
Motion by Brian Corrigan, second by Eric. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Anytime, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, item C, approval, city staff to Small Business Loan Commission.
Yep, this one should be much quicker. I don't think you need to be introduced to your staff. But I recommend that the following staff be appointed ex officio to the Winooski Small Business Loan Committee: city manager, planning and zoning manager, and staff accountant. And I will be the staff liaison to that committee, but I will be a non-voting member.
Okay, who wants to give a speech first? No?
You wrote them,
Why
right?
you're interested?
Yeah.
What brings you to Winooski?
Because I went to their offices and said, you will be on this and you will be.
You guys also get a different financial incentive to participate in these
Yeah.
types of things. No, but thank you guys. I think that will leave the committee in good hands from both the public and the staffing perspective, so exciting. Any questions or concerns for Heather around that process and decisions?
Are you gonna be able to hit the ground running now?
Yes,
Yeah?
yeah, but it's my goal to put out a press release, roll out the program by the end of January.
Outstanding, outstanding.
Speed at which we've have grown accustomed to things moving when
Yep.
you're coming out of that office. Any questions, concerns from the public? Good. If none, I'll entertain motion for approval of the city staff being Angela, Jesse, and Heather to staff this,
No,
oh, excuse
no.
me. Wait, what did I do?
Heather's-
Oh,
Heather's a
no,
liaison.
I'm sorry, Paul, to the Small Business Loan Commission. We've got that switched up, our committee.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Do we want to name it people or positions?
Positions
I think we
would
should
be
name
good.
positions.
Okay, sure. Makes sense.
So city manager, planning.
So I would
friendly
accept,
amendment.
I'll entertain a motion, so by all means.
I move that we appoint the city manager, planning and zoning manager, and staff accountant as ex officio appointments to the Winooski Small Business Loan Committee.
Second.
Motion by Nicole, second by Brian Corrigan. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Congratulations.
Hey Heather, can you?
Okay. Public Works budget.
So tonight is Public Works Night. I'm gonna have John and Joe and Ryan come join me up here. So we have two different presentations for you tonight on Public Works related budget, actually three budget questions. The first is the overview budget presentation that we've been doing for all of the departments, and then the second and third relate specifically to the Headworks project, where we do anticipate a bond vote on town meeting day. So I am gonna start, but before I do, can you guys introduce yourself quickly for the council and the camera?
John Cho, Utility Manager of Public Works.
Joe Shaw, Deputy Director of Public Works.
Ryan Lambert, Project Manager, Public Works.
Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for all you do.
So, as we've been doing with all the departments, starting with the organizational structure, so we have 15 FTEs in Public Works, including a director that will start on February 5th. I do want to give this team here a huge amount of credit for keeping the operations going as smoothly as possible over the last 6 months and during this transition. It's been a challenge, but I'm really proud of the work they've done and really proud of the kind of culture at Public Works right now and how the team is working together. So much appreciation to them. We currently have just one vacancy other than the Public Works Director in this department, so we've been able to staff up. As you know, we settled a union contract this year, and also bringing on the project manager, a new project manager into this role has really let us further some of these big projects, even with the vacancy in the Public Works Director position, so it's been great. We're going to a little bit share this presentation, so you'll hear from all of us over the next couple of slides. So to talk about the FY17 outcomes, you're going to hear from Joe.
So when I first saw this list, I thought to myself, boy, it doesn't look like we did much. But what people don't understand is we, Public Works, we don't really do a good job at promoting what we do. There's hundreds of things that we don't have on the list, and you certainly wouldn't want to see everything that we do, but these were the key things that came to our mind. And there's considerations on some of these bullets that aren't real evident just by reading the bullet. For example, rebuilding Railroad Lane. One of the improvements that we made when we rebuilt Railroad Lane was the road used to be crowned like any normal road in the center. And so when you had rain, it's a steep hill, when you had rain, floodwaters would go down and wash out basements and driveways and such. So what we did is when we rebuilt the road, we took in consideration of those people, their complaints and stuff, and we regraded the road so that the water sheds towards the embankment now. So that was a big thing, and we haven't had any problems with flooded basements or washed out driveways since then. Another thing that we've done is we do a lot of our own in-house concrete work now. We used to have to hire it all out. We would do the excavation and then hire a contractor to come in and do the work. And it typically cost us $26 to $30 linear foot. Because we do it now, we got the cost down to about $10 a linear foot. And so the reconfiguring of Mountspey Avenue and West Lane and the curbing on Leclerc Street was all done in-house with our own staff.
Awesome.
FY 18 accomplishments will be Ryan.
So this is a list of most of the accomplishments that we have made this fiscal year, which is ongoing. I'm not going to list all of them, but I'll highlight a handful for you. One is the complete rebuild of Orchard Terrace. That was done over the summer, June, July, August. It was a success. The three of us managed the contractor from start to finish. We replaced an undersized water main, rebuilt the pavement that was in very poor condition. I think that we had a lot of positive feedback from the residents of that road during the construction process. We were on schedule and on budget. Main Street preliminary engineering is ongoing. I'll highlight the drilling that we did on Main Street. That was another success. We did about 40 test borings to look at soil, groundwater, bedrock contamination in the soil on Main Street. And as you know, this is an urban area, a lot of utilities in the ground. Some are known, some are not known. Managed to do the 40 borings without hitting a single utility. That was a major success.
Major success.
Third item I'll highlight is the sidewalk replacement on St. Peter's Street. We had a lot of complaints about the sidewalk on this street in front of the school in particular. Had settled differential to the curb, creating quite a bit of a trip hazard. We approached several contractors that do what's called slab jacking. It's not something that we've ever done before as a city, but what it involves is injecting a polyurethane foam under the slabs of the sidewalk to raise them. Turned out to be a very successful project. 200 feet of sidewalk. We fixed the differential and corrected the trip hazard for a cost of about $4,000. To actually go in and reconstruct, re-pour the concrete sidewalk and curbing would have easily cost 10 times that. So that was a major success.
And it also would have took us probably 6 weeks to do it, where we completed it in 4 days.
Yes.
Wow.
And the last item is the Myers Pool. We are full steam ahead on the engineering design work for that. Completed the survey, the drilling, and the architect and the engineer are currently in the process of coming up with a design, which we may value engineer, but we'll have a cost estimate to bring forward.
FY 19 goals. John.
So, I'm not gonna reread them to you, but I think Ryan pretty well hit on the revitalization project. Your alternatives meeting was Wednesday night this week, yeah. That, more to come on that. We've got 96 pay for parking spots in the city now, and I think code enforcement will be coming forward with some proposals for West Canal and Malice Bay Avenue for some additional spots in the future. Joe and I are working on a street sweeping program that we're gonna try to, right now I'm perusing some grant opportunities for a new regenerative sweeper. Ours is dated, it's real maintenance heavy, so installing some signs that, so similar to the parking ban, we can do some street sweeping, breaking the city up into different locations and asking people via the signs not to park so we can get to the curb. We're replacing a dump truck, old number 6. That's the $60,000 that we're spending in CIP in the capital for the general fund. TIF district is going to need to spend $32,000 to retrofit, how many lights, Joe? 40?
32.
32 lights. There's a retrofit kit that Joe found.
I'm sorry, 28.
28 now. We already did 4. So that's what that line item is. Replacing the roof. That's $10K in your CIP budget. We're working with Hoyle Tanner and staff to work on the maintenance in the parking garage, doing line striping all over the city. That's internal. We'll talk more with Wayne and myself at the end of the budget presentation about the headworks upgrade proposal at the wastewater plant. But we are full steam ahead putting out RFPs, Ryan and myself, on the generator. That's a natural gas generator and natural gas boiler replacements at the wastewater plant. Right now they're a 1976 boiler, and the generator doesn't power the entire plant. So we've got that in our capital improvement budget as well. Bridge railing, Ryan's got control on that project. We've got 2 grants worth about $375,000. 20,000 of that is going to be our local share of the grants. So pretty much the north side railing, right there, replacement.
The east side railing and portions
East.
of
Yeah, depends on which way.
the upstream.
Upstream, there it is, yep. Wayne and I will be working on some phosphorus permit studies. That's, our permit's due in 2020 for the new TMDL, the phosphorus limits. But we've got some internal work to do, and the Headworks project could possibly help us in that endeavor. But more to come on that one. We're gonna do more slip lining, more manhole rehab this summer, like we've done for the last 2 years. It's reaped some real good benefits on tightening up our collection system and bringing them into another 50 to 75 years of use. Joe's gonna work on the tree paver in downtown. We're investigating some options. You notice the sidewalks are undulating. There's quite a bit of a root pushing up on those sidewalks, so we've got some opportunities there that we need to explore and do something, because it's again another trip hazard. I don't know much about the fiber, but that you'll find in this coming year. The pool, again, Ray Coffey and company are dealing with that, and landscaping and refurbishing parks and dog parks. It's going to be DPW. Thanks.
So now getting into more of the budgetary numbers, so as you know, the leadership proposed budget continues the investments in infrastructure and allows us to hire the public works director. That was a big change from the level services budget to the leadership budget. And then there are a few other minor changes in the expense lines. We've talked about eliminating the 2 electric vehicles. We are reducing the diesel line by $5,000 to better match past usage. We haven't spent that line in full. And then we are also reducing the DPW vehicle maintenance line by 11,000. In the capital improvement budget that you'll see, we are recommending investment of a larger grade lift structure at the Public Works Garage. That will enable enable our staff to work on all of our equipment, which means we believe that we won't have to send as many pieces out for maintenance as we currently do, which is why that line is being reduced. So then walking through the general fund and the two enterprise funds here, I'm gonna turn this back to Joe.
Yeah, as the bullets show, it's primarily streets, grounds, and facilities work, and it partially funds engineering work under the director and some of the project work that Ryan is doing. There's a 3% increase from the FY18 budget, and that's basically based on the new contract that we've agreed to with ASME, with the union. So it's basically their salaries and benefits that cause the increase. And that's what it says at the bottom, so don't want to be redundant. But
And that just as another general reminder for the public and for the council, this is very small on the screen, but if you go to the website to the FY19 proposed budget, you can see this in full page clearer, a clearer presentation. And John.
The water fund first is, we're not proposing a change in the rate. I think you're going to find that we're gonna have that conversation fairly soon. Champlain Water District went up 3% this fiscal year. I know they're contemplating it, but we just got notification of that. And the state has a water fee where they fund their staffing from that fee, and they are looking at potentially 12 to 15% increase. And that's a per 1,000-gallon fee. It's pretty substantial. So I think during this fiscal year, one of the things that we are going to be working on is a rate study and a proposal. Wastewater rate seems to support its capital budget pretty well, but we're always into the reserves to do anything in water. So it's clear, and we've looked at local Chittenden County, other Chittenden County water systems, and found that we're right in the middle of the pack cost-wise. So I think there's room for that, and I don't mean to preempt anything, but I believe that's been a recommendation for a couple of years to look into that. So we're going to work on that. I don't think, it's fairly level funded from we're anticipating a 1% increase in our revenue from projected FY18. Like Joe said, our salaries went up, but the biggest line item in the water budget is the salaries, but we reallocated some staff. So you can see that between FY18 and 19, it actually went down. As you know, we'll talk about the capital reserves again. We've got on the left-hand side of the reserve capital budget sheet, that we'll be contributing about $40,000 from our operating to the fund balance, but then in capital, we're going to actually remove $80,000, so that 50,000 delta is coming out of reserves this year in order for us to do operations and maintenance. So again, there's part of the problem with the water budget. Any questions on the water side?
It seems like it's been, part of my time, since water rates have been touched. Do we even know the last?
2012 was the
12, I
last
believe.
one.
2012?
Yeah. It was a nominal increase, and Champlain Water, we track theirs, and so the proposal will show what we pay, what we buy water for, and what we've maintained for a budget, and I think it's pretty obvious what we need to do at some point here close soon.
And I think you'll see this later, but one of the things we're also working towards with John's leadership around the asset management system is really understanding the age of our underground infrastructure. and what we need to be investing in that annually to do good preventative maintenance, and how we're building that into the rate structure. So we're not just using the rates to maintain operation and then relying on reserves for capital, but we're actually investing in that preventative maintenance. So I think that will be part of the rate study as well.
We put a lot of effort into the collection system. It's time to get back to the distribution system. Times here, yeah. So, as you know, water resources, wastewater and stormwater, their funds are combined. Again, like Joe said, about a 3% increase in salaries due to the ASME contract. And we've had some increases in miscellaneous is about all for the wastewater, which involves some general transfer of funds.
salary contingency?
Salary contingency as well for increasing some staff members' salary and admin here, I believe. Yep. The capital wastewater and stormwater fund, about the only thing that, that those bullets are telling us is that we have some opportunities with drawing money. Luckily, we've through allocations and through building in the city, we've been able to increase the revenue. So we're spending those monies down, putting money back into the collection system and the wastewater plant. It's a fairly aggressive things that we're taking on down at wastewater, as well as I told you about the generator and the boiler. We're changing out some big blowers, 75 horse blowers that is about 85% of our power use. So we're putting a hybrid blower in that is, as Wayne knows, it's not a real animal, but it has it's a hybrid of two different technologies, so it'll be much more energy efficient for us, and so our power consumption should go down, and with the generator we may be able to tag onto the curtailment system that Green Mountain Power offers and operate the plant just on generator power during those peak days and get some real payback from GMP on that. So we've got some energy thoughts there, and that's what is involved in that capital budget for the most part. Questions on the wastewater, stormwater budget at all?
Just thinking back around discussions of those reserves, they're large for these funds because there's a lot of equipment and infrastructure there, and I think people can forget that sometimes. It is great to see. I mean, there was a conversation a couple of years ago that it was time to start spending some money, and it's great to see you guys finding creative ways to put funds back into the systems and into that infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. So that's a really good point. It's a terrible problem to have, right?
Yeah. Well, and that, people are quick, not this specific screen, but when we had the situation that we had a few years ago, with the frost going down 72 inches, however far it went down, we could pluck $174,000 out of reserves and address the issues, both from the system standpoint and from the water expense standpoint, which was not a position that the city's always been in. Good job.
And then, of course, our last slide is just our emerging issues. So, new director coming on board in February. Look forward to his leadership and getting him up to speed on all things Winooski. As I mentioned before, we have some real interest in doing, focusing some more time and effort around capital planning and using that asset management system to think about how we invest in preventative maintenance annually and build that into our tax rate and rate structures. So we'll be coming back to you over the next fiscal year with those. We don't currently have any capital needs assessments for our city facilities. So again, in the interest of, we've done some work around that for our utilities, but for our facilities, we need to build that out as well. You'll hear more about the Headworks project in a minute, and of course, Main Street and the pool and the bridge you've heard a lot about, but are definitely significant public works projects coming up.
What I find really exciting about this, I gotta be really honest, is the group that we tend to see the least is you guys, right? And that's extremely problematic from my perspective, because it's a sign that we have not been doing some of the large investments in infrastructure that we've needed to over the last several years. So it's exciting to see more of you. You know, I mean, from a baseline standpoint though, besides these big projects, I mean, the core function of what the city provides is a place where people can live and really have an unfettered access to getting to their jobs every day, walking downtown and buying groceries if they want to, going to a bar or restaurant, and, you know, 40,000 people plus passing through town every day. And you guys are the engine behind making sure all that is there. The things that people sometimes take for granted are there and functional, that when they flush their toilet, it goes the right way. When they turn their faucet on, water comes out and it's clear. So thanks for all the work you do, and it's really exciting to see some of these larger investments in infrastructure starting to come to fruition. And we can't get there if you guys aren't able to do the planning and the coordination around that. So it's an exciting place to be.
Thank you.
Open up for some questions on the budget presentations. This is one too, I'll say from like a general standpoint, doing the water and wastewater later versus doing them all together is really, really helpful to have them all together. So just from a process standpoint, that was great. Questions?
No, I want to hear more about the headworks and garage projects.
Brace yourself, it's coming.
I'm excited for that.
But from a speed perspective, they just crush community services. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks. John, don't go anywhere. Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce Wayne Elliott from Aldrich Elliott Engineering. Wayne put together a PowerPoint presentation just to give you a snapshot as to why and what that we're looking at down there with the bond vote in March. The one slide that we're still vacillating on is the schedule. It's pretty aggressive to try and get this designed and bid this year, but I think we may try. The other only caveat to that is that we may not get a real aggressive pricing from contractors if we get this out late summer for a build in the fall. So we're gonna have to play that by ear. I think we're gonna try and do that. And along with the Headworks project, I wanted to tag on to the bond vote a garage down at the wastewater plant. Right now, we currently house the large Vector and the tanker truck up at the Public Works garage, and I hear about it almost once a week from Joe. Now, it's a domino effect. When you have to move a vehicle, you have to shuffle things around in there. It's just not big enough. So having those two pieces of equipment that primarily function out of the wastewater plant at the wastewater plant makes a lot of sense. Plus, we are pretty shoehorned in at the treatment plant, and this would give us a little more garage space for working on vehicles in the off season or in the winter season. So that is at the end of this. So I was hoping to bring those two projects together and maybe as a quantity discount when we're doing building, but we're just gonna have to see how that goes. So that's the only real slide, but.
You all set?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
And if I can just add to that quickly, the generator work, which is part of the garage project that John's referring to, has been funded in the last couple of years through the CIP, so it's not all new money this round, it's money that's been building up to pair these projects together.
Yes, sir.
So, good evening. So I guess you're excited to talk about the Headworks, huh?
To hear about it anyway.
Yeah. So if you've been down to the plant, it's just a brief overview here. The This is, of course, the drive that extends off from West Allen Street. Currently, you know, the flow comes into the plant about here. This is kind of what we call your preliminary treatment, which is what we're going to replace. This is the control building. John's going to talk a little bit about the garage here at the end of this. Pretty much the treated flow comes down here at the south end and is discharged directly to the Winooski River. This is kind of an abbreviated version. I'm just going to kind of give you a quick overview of what we looked at. I mean, ultimately, the decision point tonight is, you know, whether you want to proceed ahead with a bond vote on this in town meeting day. So this is really timely, a discussion about Seth's comments about, you know, the work the city's done over the last few years. And one of the things that's important here, so this is the original control building, built about 1970, phosphorus improvements done about 1979. Fair amount of work done from 94 to 98. Nothing really done in the last 20 years. So that work that was done in the mid 90s, you know, typically 20-year, 25-year design life. You know, the city's things have been well maintained down there. You're doing a lot of things recently, the generator replacement, a new blower, but as far as large capital projects, nothing's been done down there for the last 20 years. So we initiated the headwork study here in early 2017. So generally we're talking about is preliminary treatment, and what that is mostly doing is removing the screenings, the inorganic material, and the grit removal. Bunch of reasons you want to do that. It's good for the process downstream. It protects the equipment, the pumps, keeps things from plugging. The organic material that's pulled out, it's the plastics, the rubbers, those kind of things, which you don't want to carry through the treatment plant. Ultimately, that ends up with your sludge and goes to other places. Obviously, the process downstream runs much smoother too if those things aren't accumulating on the water surface as you work through the different process tanks. What you have currently for preliminary, there's a grinder. That's pretty much what it does. The flow comes through the unit and just grinds, chops things up, still stays within the flow stream. It doesn't remove anything. And then you have an older grit removal system. We call it detritus, old removal, marginal performance. A lot of work was done on that about 20 years ago, so it's reaching the end of its design life. And the other thing, I tried to grab a photo, but if you go down there, the grit cyclone and the dumpster are kind of outside in a wooden closure. It's been like that for quite a few years and it works, but not ideal from a permanent situation. So give you an idea about a couple types of screens we looked at. This is a rotary, pretty common. There's quite a few around here. One of the things to note with Winooski that's pretty unique is with a treatment plant of Winooski's size is one of the few that doesn't have screening upstream as the flow comes into the plant. This rotary screen, the way this works, the flow comes in, there's a basket here that's got openings. What you're doing is capturing the organic material in the basket. The liquid and the organics continue to pass through. And then what happens is that material is pulled up this screw conveyor. It's solid, which you can see the material over on the right here. The water is, again, passes back out of there into the flow stream, and the screenings drop into a dumpster here for disposal, and that's typically going to landfill. Another type that's pretty common in some of the larger plants, this is what we call a fine screen. You can see the flow passes through 1/4-inch openings. It's got bars, vertical bars. Same thing, it pulls that material up to here to the top of the screen and it dumps it out on the back side. Again, that's the inorganic material, and it goes into a solids washer, and from there it's discharged off the dewatered material to a dumpster. This is a neat unit that's pretty common here over the last 3 to 5 years. This goes in back of the screen we just saw, and it's called a washer compactor. And what happens is that inorganic material is dropped into here. You can have a single or dual auger, and what that does is it compresses that material, it gets the water back out, goes back into the flow stream, and by the time you push it out this discharge chute to a dumpster, it's about 40%, almost 40% solids. It almost looks like concrete. Really, it's great for reducing odors. It obviously reduces the disposal costs of what's having to go to the landfill. Just a brief overview of the different advantages. The rotary screen that we saw initially, lower construction costs, one piece of equipment, one motor, a little bit lower energy costs. Number 2, the mechanically clean bar screen, more common in the larger plants. A little more simpler for maintenance, narrower channel, has more flexibility to push the dewatered screenings over to a dumpster a longer distance. And as I mentioned, it's better with the odor control reduction, and better reduces the volumes of material that needs to be moved off site for disposal. The second part of this preliminary treatment is the Vortex grit. You have that now. Again, it's older, kind of dated technology. It's not as good from a performance. We're looking at a Vortex grit system. This is pretty energy efficient. And what happens is the water comes in here, circles around, the grit settles to the bottom. It's pumped out, and goes to a separate container, again, where it's dewatered and hauled off site as it is currently. So the proposed project, what's included, we've got a new headwork structure. It would be about 20 by 30 feet. I'll show you the location here, proposed here in the next slide. It would have a screen, again, with a 1/4-inch openings to capture the inorganic material. And then it's gonna have the Vortex grit removal that's gonna pull the grit out of the wastewater. This is the location at the north end of the site. The flow comes in this direction. So you would see again, about a 20 by 30 foot structure, similar architecturally to the existing control building. That would house internally the screen and the grit removal system, and have a dumpster, that would be picked up and for taking the disposal of that material off site. It would be a classified space, so that has special construction requirements, gas detection, certain electrical requirements that are to meet the NFPA 820 in there. Brief overview of the total project cost. On the right-hand side, we've got the construction costs at about $850,000. We carry a 10% construction contingency. We're assuming this is a state-funded project, so this is typically the format that we're required to follow. We've got engineering for preliminary, final design permitting, putting contract documents together. The construction phase is, the bid, construction administration, and on-site representation. Other costs, $21,500 for permit fees, legal, short-term interest. So we're looking at a total project cost here of about $1.2 million. For this piece of it, the recommended bond amount is $1.2 million. May want to choose to add on to that for the garage that John's going to talk about briefly at the end here. Available funding sources, really looking at state revolving loan program. This project is on the priority list, 20-year term, 2% interest rate. You can go to a 30-year term, but for this type of work, we wouldn't recommend it. The building, concrete really would have more than a 30-year life, but the equipment really has a 20 to 25-year useful life, so we don't want you to borrow money for longer than the equipment's gonna last. One thing that's really neat about this program is because the city went through a qualifications-based selection process for the engineering, you qualify for up to 50% of the engineering work as loan subsidy that you don't have to pay back. Again, on the construction side of things, you're eligible for up to a $250,000 loan subsidy, and you do meet the MHI does meet the affordability criteria. The other nice thing about this program is the first payment isn't due until about 2 years after substantial completion. So if construction isn't completed until middle of 2019, that first loan payment isn't due till about 2021, so.
And just, if I can add to that, just as a reminder, the debt service for the clarifier, the final year is FY20, so this debt service would pick up from that capacity.
Yep, so that's the biggie at the bottom here is a result of this project. Actually, you have a 0 increase in sewer rates, so. Again, $1.2 million for the amount, estimating $315,000 in loan subsidy that you wouldn't have to pay back. You're looking at an annual loan payment of about $54,000 for the 20-year. Again, no increase in sewer rates. Schedule here, John talked about this already. I kind of showed a more conservative time frame here, but I think our expectation is if you did pass a bond in March, we'd jump right into the design, contract documents, permitting. We could definitely be ready to put this out to bid late summer. The only caution there is sometimes depending how busy contractors are, you can get decent pricing and sometimes not. So as we approach that, we can see if it makes sense and kind of how the bid climate looks like. This would be a good fit because they could get the earthwork, the concrete work, the building kind of done in the fall, and then kind of come back in the winter months and put the equipment in. So we can continue to have those discussions again if the bond vote passes and see if that schedule makes sense. But worst case, we're showing, going out to bid in early February next year, when you can definitely get good competitive pricing and the bid climate's optimum. And questions. So this is your grinder that you have now, and this is the unit that does the shredding. The flow passes through that, and that's what you currently have. And again, so that doesn't pull anything out of the flow stream. It just tears it up and grinds it and moves on through the plant. So, okay, whoops. Any questions?
Open it up for council.
What if it was to go out to bid in February, like your timeline, what do you think the completion date would be?
It takes longer than you think, and the reason for that is the equipment. By time, you get a contractor on board, you a couple months for shop drawings, in a winter it's about 6 months. So the site work and the building and everything really isn't the kind of the critical path item, it's actually getting the equipment. So that's why it could work well if we can hit that schedule and get it out to bid in August, get a contractor on board in September. That way he could get the foundation, site work, building all kind of done, and the equipment showing up in, maybe February, March time frame, and he can do the install on that. So, but it's usually the equipment kind of delivery timeline that's a critical item here.
With like we're obviously adding process, but doing it in an efficient way, it sounds like. Do we expect higher operating costs because of this? Or what?
There could be a slight increase, and it depends a little bit. We try to be as flexible. One of the things that we're really trying to do in all these projects is the sustainability, energy efficiency is critical. The challenge we have a little bit because of this structure, because of the exposed wastewater flow, we do need to design the heating ventilation systems in that space to be appropriate for the classification. But what we try to do with that is set that up so the operators have a lot of flexibility. For example, they've got a gas detection system, so they're not operating that system 24/7. They're operating it when they're into that space. So we try to make sure that's as energy efficient and as flexible to operate as possible. I'd say generally what you have, if anything, would be relatively slight. The equipment we're adding isn't high horsepower. So with some of the other things that you're doing there, if anything, it's going to still probably be better than where you're at now. So
It's a pretty corrosive environment. So a lot of plants are using radiant heat floors, and we have the new boiler, so we could create a zone for that radiant heat and not have any modine heater or something sitting there with a fan and something to corrode. Plus it's in a location that is really just a turn of the valve to get it running from where it currently goes through this grading that we rake manually 3 times a day to the new facility. So we can set up a manhole in a bypass fashion, and then when the building is ready to go live, close the valve and run the flow through there. So we're going to keep the same structure, and we had talked about actually talking with the state about downsizing the design flow, because right now they require 4 MGD, which we rarely see. So if we could downsize the equipment with the idea that anything after first flush is fairly clear, because we still have a combined system, no matter how good we're getting in the collection system, we still have rainwater that reaches us. So that first flush would go through the facility, and anything over the top of maybe the 3.4 million could go to the current screening, in that that's very little bit in there. So we've got some detailed work to arm wrestle about, but I think with the state is pretty flexible in that regard, talking about max design at any rate.
So, continuing on that thread, you know, we've got the debt service neutralized. Have we done estimates on operation, just operation cost increase?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
With the small horsepower, and, you know, it isn't inside, right now, everything is outside.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is to get those things inside, because we have a real struggle in the wintertime to dispose, as you can imagine, everything's sitting in a small heated wooden cabinet with a dump trailer. So having everything hopefully going into one dumpster where we can hire a Myers or a company to come in once or twice a week and just pull in, back up, get the dumpster, take it away, put a new one in, is gonna really save a lot of horsepower down there that I could certainly use the guys to do something else.
Great. I mean, I was gonna ask that if there was a consistency in schedule to the dumpster fillings, or if those undulate.
It's about 1/3 of a yard a day, with just grit.
Mm.
But if we get a real barn burner rainstorm, it's flushing the lines, and we can get upwards of a yard, which is pretty substantial difference, especially when we've got a 1-yard dumpster there, so,
Right.
yeah, we have to be aware. So, yeah, anything we can do to improve our efficiency down there, and I just mean staffing efficiency, is, these guys have been raking 20th century technology for too long, and it is all piling up in those aeration basins. They're a foot, I think I talked about this last time I was here, they're 1.5 feet thick of what you don't want, so it's taking up capacity.
I think it is also a long-term operational concern from a staffing perspective. You know, we have an amazing crew down there who's really been on top of running a pretty dated facility, and they're going out twice a day or more and raking this stuff up. And when we think about succession planning and continuity, we really need those minds focusing on more innovation, you know, with what could be coming down from the state and phosphorus reduction requirements. We need them focusing on those kinds of improvements and not out with rakes twice a day.
Yeah.
We want to make this an appealing position for people in the future.
We've cleaned, first one?
Yeah.
So that first basin right there, we've cleaned the second basin. These two right here are offline because our flows aren't at design yet, so that's why they're green, they just have algae on them. So, you know, these 4 tanks here are loaded. We gotta do those, and it's not a pretty easy job. It's very manual, but we'll get those cleaned in the next 2 years.
So would this this constitutes a shift to a fully automated system or a more automated system?
And I'll be
Fully
pretty
automated.
fully automated. I mean, similar to what the rest of the communities in Chittenden County have. It's kind of unheard of. And unfortunately, as diligent as we are, I say we, I've done it before, but the guys that work down there, no matter how diligent they are, that stuff is getting through.
Right.
Yeah, and of course, we got an aging workforce too, so the more automated, you know, the less manual and stuff, I mean, it just makes it easier, and that's generally what most places have gone to over the years.
What are you trying to say?
We're all there too. It wasn't you in particular, John.
With the option that includes the solids washer, is there an
Yeah.
idea on what cost savings might be in not having to haul away that night of grit?
We haven't got to that point, but one of the things, back to Seth's comment, is we're wrapping up the preliminary engineering study, and so we'll be going through your operating budget. We'll be making some estimates on those for that particular piece of equipment. If there's any savings on the disposal side, we'll look at the electrical costs. Generally, what we'll do is we'll take your existing sewer budget, you know, and go through where you're at now and try to project out where you'll be, you know, once you get that up and running. So we have a handle not just on the debt side, but any changes in O&M costs too. Yeah.
The hope is that we can get both processes into one dumpster.
Yeah.
So we can have one garage door, back in, no muss,
Yep.
no fuss.
Other questions?
So which unit are you suggesting we go?
Good question, Brian. I think, even though the screening, they're pretty similar in cost. We have a heck of a grease problem in Winooski. Everything is gravity to the plant. There's no pump station where it can emulsify and float and be removed there. It all ends up down at the plant. And I don't know as any amount of education, and it's not necessarily restaurants, there's residential grease, I mean, because it comes from all over. We've tried to isolate this and figure out where it's coming from and see if there was bang for the buck to get out in a PR standpoint, but the nuts and bolts of it is that we need to remove it at the plant, and the vertical screen does a better job of that. So we may push, I think we have, from an operations standpoint, push for that. The downside to that unit is getting them all into one dumpster, the grit and the screenings, because of the way hydraulically they have to be oriented in the building. So we may need an auger, we may need the wash unit, which is another $60,000. So I'm not proposing this unit yet, and maybe just an auger as opposed to the wash. But stay tuned, and we'll keep you guys abreast as we kind of zero in on the design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're not fully committed either way at this point?
We're not, we're leaning towards this unit though because of its efficiency removing grease.
Yeah, the budget we prepared, is based on this type of screen and including the washer compactor.
Also, the 1.2 is inclusive of the
Yes, it
washer?
is. Yeah, we just try to be conservative,
Yeah.
And we're still working through the details on the options.
Any questions, council?
And again, if we can get a contractor in to build 2 buildings during the same process, which it may incentivize a contractor. There's darn few contractors in the Vermont, New Hampshire area, upstate New York, that do this kind of install. But a building are very similar, foundations, and so that may help push a contractor to be a little more aggressive with his pricing if I have 2 buildings.
Yeah.
So we're hoping for that, but again, like Wayne was saying, the climate is, but if we're ready with the design engineering, we can build it this fall, and if we have to wait till spring and bid it out over the winter and rebid it again, we can do that. I mean, Joe can suffer through one more winter with our tanker trucks and tractor trucks in his garage, but it'd be nice to do them both together, I think, but it may not make a difference. We're at a $1.5 million price tag is I don't say it's a piddly sum, but for a contractor to come out of New Hampshire, if he's busy, may not be real competitive, so we have to play that game.
Yeah. The other thing we'll have to talk about too, which, from a cost standpoint, is the strings tied to the state funding. Because that's a revolving loan. It's got American Iron and Steel. We've got the Davis-Bacon wage rate. So we'll talk about that in May. We want to be a little careful how you package those or how you do those 2 projects, because you don't want to push that additional cost necessarily on the addition if you're going to use, just city funds for that piece of work. So as John said, there's a contractor. You've already got somebody doing the concrete work in the building, so they may be attractive to work on both of those concurrently. So.
What's the impact of the garage on the current, if we're retiring the current debt service payment, will adding the garage to this project still have it be a neutral impact, or will it push it beyond the current cost?
Adding it to the bond, are we?
So we're looking at around a $250,000 garage, $250,000. The 1.2 budget is around $60,000. So do the ratio, we won't get 2% because this is the revolving loan fund for the Headworks wastewater loan.
Right.
But I think the bond bank is pretty competitive. If I'm not mistaken.
It's going to be a little over 3%.
3%, yeah. So, we can use the reserve money, I just assume bond it, because it's a building.
Right.
And take out a loan, so it may be another 14 to 15, Angela, for a $250,000, 3%.
I have done the numbers for an additional portion.
So it's a
Okay,
good
so when we talk
question.
about that, that would be good to know.
Yeah, so when we talk about the CIP at the January 22nd meeting, we'll have a clear answer for you on that.
I guess just strategically, again, going back to sort of the initial concept, while getting something for nothing from a general perspective sounds nice, just from an impact perspective, if we do build in more debt capacity, that's not the worst thing in the world either. We might have to explain to people why taxes are going up a little bit, but, you know, again, that's gotta be a strategy going forward, is building in some capacity to carry some debt, so we can continue to do new projects once we retire the old,
Valid point.
you know, versus
We
yanking from
arguably
reserves.
have that capacity in this instance, which is why this is such a
Yeah.
easy sell.
I guess the question is if you can get a very small amount added to it, do you think about doing that? I mean, you're right, I mean, there's a breaking point there somewhere where it tips one or the other. Just an idea, just a little.
Is there any increased impact to the residents that live down in this general area of town? Will there be more, not during construction, obviously there'll be more impact there, but like moving forward, will there be increased noise or increased trucks? Or, I mean, I guess if you have a garage down there, there might be some more, couple extra trips here and there, not really significant because you're going down there anyway.
Right.
But with the new building, with the new equipment, it's not.
There's no real air movement there, or high-pitched frequencies coming from, and it's inside.
Yeah.
Right now, it's all outside, so, you know, there is some noise pollution there now. It would actually be less.
Great.
You know, other than a trash truck coming down once a week, but I think minimal.
Great.
Sure, yeah.
Solar the roof.
Jesse, can you pop up those two, plan 1 and plan 2 on that, please?
This is one.
Yeah, so this is the design here, so there's your control building right here. That is the,
Mm-hmm.
there's the new garage location, right there, and then your headworks would be over in here. So we would have a garage door coming in this side, and a garage door going out the back side, so you'd still continue with the looping, maybe the size of those vehicles. So the location is really pretty well set up for this type of garage. GMP's got their transformer facility here. I've spoken with them. They see no problem with that at all, locating it there. We don't really have any future processes that would go back here or over here. So we've got some open ground there from a footprint standpoint.
Not much for buried utilities there.
There's not much of anything, you know, the flow line comes down that we would tie into, and so we're pretty well set up for this type of a facility, both buildings. Did you get the other one?
Yeah, it's pretty uncommon to have that much available space at a wastewater treatment plant site.
Right. This is an architectural mock-up of what we're designing. So there's a parapet right there of the current building. It would tie right in. Garage doors on one side and double garage doors on the other. And this is facing kind of the only neighbor that we really have. Just a couple of quick windows and air vents up here for air handlers. So it's a pitched, one single pitched roof. It's good design. I think it's a decent design for what we need. It's nothing extravagant. We don't need anything extravagant, but we need wash down capability inside and floor drain so we can wash down vehicles and try and make it into a useful space.
This isn't the first time we've talked about having this building, right? That's come to us here
Mhm.
before, right?
Closer than we've done,
Great.
actually seeing it on a bond road and
Yep.
getting it built.
Yeah, we talked theoreticals, I don't think we even talked about the funding part of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a design already,
Can't remember,
it's
to be
already paid
honest.
for, it's on paper.
There's some money.
We go out to RFP, this
There's
is what we have.
We
CIP.
we put some money aside last year for this building.
Okay.
And then it came in much higher than was put aside, so the idea is to now use this opportunity to do both instead of doing them separately.
Seth, you made a comment in between remarks, and I remember hearing some previous discussions about potentially capacity for some solar panels down there, and I'm just wondering if that discussion is still ongoing, if that has any relationship to this work.
On that roof, you scroll up, Jesse, please? You see how that's got a single pitch on the southern exposure? It would seem to me that that could be incorporated there. There's not a lot of land that is kind of encumbered from a line of sight and sunlight other than the back, but Joe uses that for snow removal place, snow dump. So it's very potential to put, I mean, it's a 50 by 40-foot garage, so it's not a small footprint. So putting some panels up on that southern exposure was thought of, and I've got some meetings to get with contractors and say, you know, let's try to sharpen our pencils on this design, and by the way, what do you think about solar panels on the roof? Certainly making it supportive for that. Yes. Great catch, Eric, thanks.
Feed it right into the Green Mountain transformers right there, right?
Tie it right in.
Other questions? Comments? It's exciting.
It is.
It's, I mean, I know, you know, from a perspective, this is, again, tends to be one of the last things people think of from a service standpoint of where this ends, right? The last stop when something goes down the drain, but I mean, just from a forward-thinking, you know, plant sustainability, long-term perspective, it's exciting. Really exciting.
Trying to do it incrementally too, not just a big upgrade, but trying to be smart about some of the upgrades and staggering them if we can.
Appreciate that, and then appreciate the impact that this has on the other equipment. Help it age more sustainably. Any other questions, comments? Questions, comments, concerns from the public?
Where do you ever want to go about wastewater right now?
It's so fascinating to hear. It's great to hear your expertise down there too.
John gives a great tour.
Don't send any more Girl Scouts.
He enthralled a group of about 16 Girl Scouts who wanted to pull every lever and push every button in the entire plant.
Yeah, not sure what they retained, but it
That's
was
all right.
fun.
That's all right.
Thank you very much. And then do we want to talk, just blur right into the state revolving loan fund agreement?
Yes, so in November, you approved our application for the State Revolving Loan Fund for this pre-engineering work. So this is just the loan document that is associated with that application that requires your approval and signature. It's for the value of the engineering work currently being done. It's assuming we move forward with the project, half of it will be forgiven during the loan process, and if we don't move forward with the project, within 5 years, we do have to repay the balance with 0 interest.
Great deal. I mean, that's a really helpful methodology the state uses to help communities out. It's a great thing that they do. It's well designed. You know, and then just in considering that, I mean, it sounds like that's pretty much the summary, is if there are concerns about the advancement of this as a bond issuance for this year, now would be the time to pipe up on those so we don't continue down that road, and staff can continue working with an understanding that there's good buy-in here. Any concerns regarding the project overall or the state's revolving loan fund agreement.
No, I think it's exciting to start doing this type of project that benefits everybody.
Is there like a number, like generally when you use this type of funding, because you have to abide by the American Steel and Davis Bacon and all that, is it generally 18% more expensive, or is there like?
That's a good question. And I probably don't have a real answer for you. It varies. It varies on the type of project. You know, it applies not to a whole lot of things. In this case, it doesn't apply to a, you know, for example, it would apply to the steel, the reinforcing the concrete. Probably not much more. I think what we're finding is more of an issue when you get into piping, hydrants, all those kind of things. So I think if you're looking at a project like this, it's probably, you know, it's a small percent. It's probably 2.5% or something at the most. My guess. At times it may get up to 6 or 7 or 8%. Depending on the project components, but something like this probably pretty small impact. So the thing here is you're getting that construction loan subsidy. And the other thing, just to kind of put the pitch out there, is we don't know how long that's going to be there, because that's a relatively new thing that they put out there the last couple of years to kind of incentivize and get more projects moving forward. So it's already dropped from 300,000 to 250, and we don't know exactly where that's going to be over the next year or the following year. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions, concerns? Everybody on board? Good deal. Any questions, concerns from the public? Comments? Very good. So seeing and hearing none, I think you can see that this is a strongly supported project and funding methodology.
Great.
Did you, sorry?
You do need to approve the loan document.
It's on this discussion.
Oh my goodness.
Do you need it for next week, or is it okay for a week?
That's fine.
We can,
Consent agenda?
consent agenda it.
Yep.
Just turn that into a verb. Other questions, concerns, comments? Seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
Motion by Brian Corrigan, second by Brian Sweeney for the discussion. Hearing seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. From, how